Chapter 2, Sarah. Then, Sarah always arrived early, not because she had to, but because she liked the quiet before everyone else came. The stillness of the room before laughter filled it, before conversation overlapped, before prayers were spoken out loud. There was something sacred about the empty space. She would set out the cups, align the chairs, adjust things that didn't need adjusting. Control in small ways. Because life, she had learned, was rarely controllable. That night, she stood at the window watching the street below, people moving with purpose, couples walking side by side, a man laughing into his phone, a woman linking arms with someone just out of frame. She watched longer than she meant to. Then she looked away. "Sarah, you're already here." She turned. There, Devon stood at the door, smiling, holding takeaway containers. "Of course she is," Ingrid's voice followed behind him. If heaven had an organizer, it would be Sarah. Laughter broke out. It was light. It was easy. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. By 6, the room was full, 12 of them. Different lives, different callings, same prayer. They ate first, as usual, always. Because it was easier to talk with food in your hands, harder to be vulnerable on an empty stomach. Conversation moved quickly, work, deadlines, clients, frustrations, jokes that only made sense to the 12 of them. But eventually, like it always did, the room then shifted. Chairs turned inward, voices softened, phones disappeared. "All right," Devon said gently. "Who wants to start?" That was always a pause, not because no one wanted to, but probably because everyone did want to say something right at the same time. Sarah felt it again, that quiet pressure in her chest, that movement where something inside her said, "Say it." She raised her hand and slightly, "I'll go." The room stilled by the raising of her hand, not dramatically, but just attuned, keen. She clasped her hands together, looked down for a moment, then up. "I don't want to rush this," she began. Her voice was calm, measured, and careful. "I don't want something temporary. I don't want something that looks right but isn't. I don't want to choose wrong just because I'm tired of waiting." A few heads started nodding softly. She said, "I want peace." She paused. The words lingered. "I want a man who is steady, who loves God more than loves me, because I know that's the way and the only way to be loved, and that he will love me properly." Silence fell over them, the good kind. She continued, "I want to feel safe, not confused, not anxious, not wondering where I stand." Her voice softened slightly. "And I don't want to have a fight for something that's meant for me." She exhaled, almost like she had begun holding that in longer than she was meant to. "So, Lord," she said quietly, "send me the person I am meant to marry, not the one that I think I want to, but the one you know I need." Again, silence. But this time it was heavier. It filled the room. Breaking that silence was Ingrid, who whispered amen. And then it followed. Everyone said amen. Sarah nodded slightly, but inside there was something more unsettled, because even as she prayed for peace, she had never truly experienced it. And it's hard to recognize something you've never known. Flashback. From then and forward to now, 13 years later. The house was beautiful, white walls, high ceilings, natural light pouring through large windows, everything in place, everything curated, everything perfect. And of course, there stood Sarah in the kitchen, still, hands resting on the counter, listening. Yeah, to that silence. But again, it wasn't the peaceful kind. It was the kind that follows after words have already done their damage. Upstairs, the door had closed. Not slammed, just closed. She didn't move. She wasn't startled. And she didn't call out or follow, because she already knew. The conversation had played out the same way it always had. Different words, same ending. You always do this. I'm not your enemy. You twist everything around. I don't feel heard or seen. Round after round, until exhaustion replaced resolution between her and her partner. She looked down at her hands. They seemed unfamiliar to her. But there, the ring sat, perfect, unmoved, unquestioned, what she had prayed for 13 years ago. From the outside, everything looked perfect. Her husband was respected, successful, well-spoken, the kind of man in public who was admired. Sarah, you're blessed, they would say at church. You got such a good man. You guys are perfect for each other. She used to smile through it. Now she just nodded silently. A smile that used to show her teeth was a smile that showed her lips to know just a nod. Because explaining the differences between appearances and reality was exhausting. She walked slowly to the living room and sat down on what looked like some couch out of some magazine that only Martha Stewart would have allowed. Her phone lit up. It was a message from none other than Ingrid. It said as she opened it, "Thinking of you today. No reason, just felt like sending it." Sarah stared at it longer than necessary and then typed back, "Thank you." She didn't send anything else because how do you explain that when everyone thinks you have everything you prayed for, and you live in this big mansion, you have the man of your dreams, the man that God supposedly brought for you, a man after his own heart, and you still feel empty? Not safe. Not emotionally, not spiritually, not in the way that she was meant to. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, and she went back into the room 13 years ago, hands clasped, voice steady, asking God for peace. "I don't want to choose wrong." She remembered her words, and her eyes opened up again, slowly. She whispered to herself, "I didn't choose wrong." The word surprised her, because that wasn't the truth she had been telling herself. I just didn't understand what I was asking for. That silence filled the room again, but this time he felt different, not empty, honest. She looked down at her hands and then up. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't ask God to change her situation. She asked him to meet her in it. "Teach me what peace actually is," she whispered. And somewhere deep beneath the disappointment, something shifted. Not her marriage, not her circumstances. Her partner stood behind that door that had closed and shut. No slam, just closed. It was her understanding, because sometimes the prayer is answered, just not the way you expect it. Sometimes the real answer comes 13 years later.